This is Coder Radio, episode 67, for September 16th, 2013. Hi everyone, you're listening to Coder Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. This episode's brought to you by our two fine sponsors, GoDaddy.com and Ting.com. I'll tell you more about both those sponsors as the show goes on. My name is Chris, and joining us from the East Coast is our always excellent host, Mr. Michael Dominic. Hey there, Michael.
Привет, comrades.
Ooh, I like it. I take it you've been reading the New York Times. Well, good morning to you, sir. How is it over there on the East Coast?
You know, it could be London. It's very dreary, very cold, very...
To
be honest, I had to run some errands this morning, and the fog was... And I live near the shore. The fog was just unbelievable.
We had a huge lightning storm. I mean, one of those where you couldn't count the between the strike and the thunder because there'd be another strike. And so I shut down the studio last night. Usually I have the stream running 24/7, and I have all the, live streams powered by the gear here in the JBH Cube. I had to take everything down last night because the power was flickering like crazy, and I just didn't want to take my chances. But today, it's just kind of a gray overcast day, which is kind of funny because I have a sense that our episode's going to be filled with color this episode.
Yeah, if we had to pick a holiday, even though we're coming up on Halloween, I think it'd be more like an Eastery color palette.
No kidding, right? It seems to be the new trend. Pastels are in, Mr. Dominic.
It's funny. I've been all about the white iOS devices for years, and my friends used to make fun of me. Oh, those are for women. Those are gay. Those are this. Those are that. Now, all of a sudden, everybody and their brother is rolling with light colors, pastels, and
it's sort of like a brightening things up and livening it up, and that's
what my line always is. I don't want anything black. I don't want anything negative. I want everything positive and happy.
So you're calling it the Blazing 7. So this week we'll talk a little bit about the iOS 7 and 64 bits and the CPUs and all those kinds of things. And I don't know if we're going to get to the second topic of the day. We'll see.
We probably won't, but I figured I'd throw it in there.
All right. Well, if we do, that'll be good. But I'm not going to tease it just in case we don't, because we can always save it for next week because that's a really good topic too. Like a really good. That's it.
Well, I'm fresh off the slides.
Oh, that's right. You know what?
Today.
Maybe we just do a big show today.
I was thinking big show. What does the chat room think? Big show, or should we just knock off right now?
We could just ramp it up. I could just read these. I could just do like a couple sponsor spots, and then we could just go. Should we just holler? I mean, we could just. I got a new game from Steam.
Well, I just got Rogue Legacy. It was on sale, so I'm good to go.
Oh, no, actually, wait a minute. No, Shane Qful says big show, and we kind of owe it to him because he's made some apps for us, so...
Yeah,
we'll do it for Shane. We'll do it for Shane.
Only for Shane, though. Yeah. Forget about you, Cheeseburger.
Why don't we start with the feedback, then? So Clements writes in asking, why isn't, Mr. Dominic, why isn't basic internet security taught in schools? He has some concerns about Mozilla Persona as well. So I take it you read those concerns?
I did. He's right. It would be wonderful if they taught that in school. I don't know. They should, right?
Yeah, I think it's because
if you think
so I touched on this a couple episodes ago, and I think one of the problems we have with technology, and one of the reasons why maybe they try to skew more towards concepts and philosophy and work ethos, is because schools are just not built for an industry that changes not just every couple of years, but really maybe every 6 months. Security can even be every quarter, really, if you really follow it. And how does a school adapt to that, right? You'd almost have to have like a work sponsorship program where you go work with an IT professional.
Well, so I'm even thinking in like high school and middle school when they're teaching you how to type and all of that kind of thing, they could be like, by the way, if you're making a password, 10 characters or better, right? I think there's some stuff they could do.
I don't know if you heard, but Apple just killed the password. I had to for the episode.
Do you want to hear this? I do not have a password on my handset.
So you're one of the 50%.
I am, because It's so annoying.
So I have two handsets. One doesn't have a password and one
Okay.
does. And I've been experimenting with Tasker on my Android phone. So when I leave my house, when basically when my Wi-Fi network goes away, my
Right.
password comes on. But I also really find it super annoying, and I'm a paranoid security guy. It's just like I want in, I want to get that thing.
Well, so here's my thought process with Prism at this point. I mean, it's already all leaked.
I'm not even worried about that so much as like just if I forget it somewhere and somebody just picks it up, I don't want them to get into my email and my text messages and all that.
True.
Yeah. So I'm more worried about my buffoonery than somebody hacksawing me. And I still can't get around to doing it. I mean, I'm trying, but I don't know if the Tasker thing actually works. But I think you're right. They could teach good password skills. They could teach use a different password for every site. These kinds of things. Use two-factor authentication. I just don't see the schools being equipped to do it though.
Well, I don't even think they could get to two-factor auth because, I don't even do two-factor auth. Right.
Wow, look at this. Look at the chat room. Look at this. They're also not putting passwords on their phones. I thought I was going to get crap for that.
I think it's the more you use the phone, the less you want to.
Yeah, and isn't it also like if every function is super quick and the one thing that you introduce, like that's the longest delay, and it's
So I used to have one of those. It was on my Android. Those where you draw the password.
Yeah, connect the dots.
So annoying. So that's when I just started taking them off.
Did you ever try the creepy Android face detection where they scan your face and then send it up to Google's cloud servers for storage?
I don't think I have the NSA lock screen. No. We're on a roll today.
We are. Okay, all right. So this one came in from the Coda Radio subreddit. The FizzBuzz drama continues. And it's also got a little enterprise Java fling to it. It's FizzBuzz, the Enterprise Edition. And this was submitted to the subreddit, the codaradio.reddit.com subreddit by Halifax. And is this like actual... Okay, here he goes. Enterprise software marks a special high-grade class of software that makes careful use of relevant software architecture design principles to build particularly customizable and extensible solutions to real problems. This project is an example of how a popular FizzBuzz game might be built were it subject to high-quality standards of enterprise software. Oh, this is great.
Oh, it's hilarious. Now, Chris, let's get a little classical here.
All right, I like that.
I feel like Pandora with this whole FizzBuzz thing.
Yeah, this is really something. Like every now and then,
I popped open the box and
it's just been.
Yeah.
I've been really surprised by the. It's been every week. There's still stuff that's coming in, and is this maybe why FizzBuzz has succeeded? Is there is something to this whole brain teaser thing?
Well, so the subredditor was just making a joke, right?
Yeah, I know.
But there's a bunch of subdirectories.
There's a lot of passion around this here FizzBuzz.
Yeah, there's. I think you're right that there is a kernel of truth in a lot of folks not being able to come out of school and actually pass the FizzBuzz test.
Is it that, or is it the game? Is it the game aspect of it?
It's not really a game. I mean, I guess it's kind of a game.
It's a challenge in a sense, though, right?
Again, you're okay depending on how you define challenge.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like it's like 50 lines of Ruby or less.
Yeah. It's just interesting because I got an email this morning from Sophie, and she sent it into the general comments, so it didn't hit the Coda Radio inbox, but she meant to send it to the Coda Radio show. She says, "Hi, Chris and Michael. My name is Sophie, and I'm in charge of communications for a small Belgian video game studio called Fishing Cactus. They say the crew there loves the show." He says, she goes on to say, "We got a project currently in development that could interest you. It's about, wait for it, coding." She says the goal of the project was to create a game that will help people grasp the essential skills of logic that programming craft requires. You're not just learning how to code, you play with its concepts. They're naming it AlgoBot, ALGO-bot. She says, "Trust me, from newbies to experts, our games will satisfy everyone around the table." She'd like to know if we want to know more in the future. Well, yeah.
Do we have a link or
no link or nothing, just a tease there. So, Sophie, if you want to get in contact, email us coderadio@jupiterbroadcasting.com and tell us more about it. Because it sounds, if you combine a little gamification to it, that's the kind of thing that would probably teach me to code. Give me a little challenge, because I just find the damn thing so boring. I just find all of the detail work and all of the specifics required to be very monotonous and unnecessary. So I would love to try a game that might change my wily ways. So thanks for sending that in.
I can see it now.
Okay. Another one from the subreddit. I love it. Clay Heartline. How do you suppose? You think I'm getting that one right?
Well, it's definitely a dude.
Yeah.
Remember from last night? I think it's actually just Kari, but I'm calling him Heartline.
Oh, he deleted this from the subreddit?
I don't know that.
Should we read it anyway? I mean, we got it, so we can still read it. All right, so, if you picked it, he says, he wants to, oh, good. Okay, I want to read it already.
Is there a reason he deleted it, maybe?
No, well, it says a rant about the tech media, so as soon as I read that headline, I'm like, I'm in. All right, something really interesting happened this week that opened my eyes about how most news organizations report on current tech. Oh, boy. Here we go. The jump from the 3GS to the 4 was what got the media to love Apple. For the past couple of years, the iPhone upgrades have been boring and downright disappointing. The only thing I remember of the upgrade from the 4 to the 4S was Siri, and that was terrible. The jump from the 4S to the 5 was better, but not good enough. The media still loved Apple despite that. At the same time, Android phones were getting better and better, and some fantastic Android phones have come out, such as the HTC One and the Oppo Find 5. There were also the Samsung phones, which gained a lot of popularity and got attention in the media. I like how he doesn't say they're good ones. They just got a lot of attention. He goes on to say, at about that time Steve Jobs passed away, the media decided to start hating Apple, and that didn't stop. This week has been incredibly odd. Despite the fact that the jump from the 5 to 5S has been the biggest since the 3GS to the 4, the media hated it, mainly because it looks the same. Not only for technical reasons, not for any technical reasons. The 5C has also been hated because it didn't fulfill the Apple rumors that it would be a crappy phone. Instead, it's just a rebranding of the 5. It seems that there has been this back and forth of loving and hating companies instead of analyzing the products. They either hate Apple and love Android, or love Apple and hate Android. I have decided to unsubscribe from all mainstream tech news and just read technical specifications of products and listen to small podcasts like Coda Radio. Well, we're not that small, but thank you. I really, really agree with what he's saying here. I don't know why he deleted it. That is a very insightful post.
I kind of wonder if one of the mods didn't delete it because it's not super dev related.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny how they never delete my post when I do that, though.
Although I think that would I think because I'm a mod, it would light up if it was deleted by a mod. I think I get a little flag in here. But you could be.
I think you're right. Yeah, because I think I'm a mod too.
So I have noticed this as somebody who my relationship with Apple is such that they have been work computers in my household since the early 90s, maybe even the late 80s, because my mom was one of the first graphic artists when that became a thing, right? And that was all done on Macs. So very early on, back when Macs were still black and white, I mean, literally, we had Photoshop 1.0 in my house on the Mac, where everything ran off floppies. And so I've been observing Apple from sort of a detached point of view for a very long time. And I've noticed this trend come and go over the years a lot, over quite literally the last 25 years.
Oh, I think it's very, very simple though, right? With the tech press in particular, it's all about their whole business model is based on clicks. And right now, being negative gets you a lot of clicks.
Right, and if there's nothing shiny, they're disappointed because it's not going to generate the traffic.
Right, and it doesn't make a nice header image. Now, if the iPhone 5S had a different body, I can tell you right now, they'd be screaming at how innovative it is and how wonderful it is.
You could see this, like Arnold is pointing out in the chat room, you could almost replace everything with Apple and Android there with Microsoft, Sony, Xbox, PlayStation, right?
Anything where there's a duopoly. I mean, even Pepsi, Coke, right?
Yeah.
Like we could go all the way back, yeah.
Now, I actually see, I subscribe to the school of thought that I think it's great that they do this sort of TikTok iteration style because from a consumer standpoint, there's sort of this steady course. Like I know if I buy an iPhone 5, then I at least got a good 2 years where all of my cases, all of my adapters are going to work. Everything's going to work out of the box. And, you can't say that about any Android device. And from like a investment standpoint to a consumer, that kind of stability and reliability is, I think, a feature. And I think Apple is well aware of this. I don't think it's any accident I don't think it's because of any laziness that they're not redesigning the chassis every single time, right?
Well, it's also maximizing the investment on the R&D for that case, right? Let's not be silly.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Great example. My mom is a avid iPhone user. She doesn't know how to do apps or anything, but she likes the iPhone because it's pretty.
Yeah, my mom loves it. In fact, I got her on Android, and she's been like, "Rrr."
Yeah, I showed her on Android, and she says, "I don't like this." She said, "Quote, it reminds me of my PC at work."
Mom emails me quite often.
Yeah. So she's back to the iPhone 4. But now she's going to be due for a new phone. In fact, I think she already is. So she's looking at the 4S and the 5. And it's funny because all she said is, oh, good, they didn't change it on me. And then I showed her iOS 7 and she cried a little bit. Very
Right.
sad.
Yeah, that is the funny thing. That's the irony is there's a big change there. But before I want to get to that, I want to
I
do
don't
our
want to get
first
into that.
spot.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that yet.
But back to his thing. You really, I mean, great job on you. It becomes, unfortunately, despite what we might prefer, it is absolutely incumbent on the reader to parse it.
Yeah.
And I, listening to a lot of podcasts that are sort of done out of the California area, there is an absolute and total and complete echo chamber. And then
Chris, name 5, and then name another 5.
and
then square the number 5.
you know what the other thing is? The other problem is a lot of these tech reporters don't live the lifestyle of the average person, right?
Right.
And their use cases for phones are dramatically different. And so that also, even though they all acknowledge it and often will espouse about how average users need this and how they know what average users want. And they will go on and on about that. But in reality, they don't actually square them up. They have different expectations for a mobile device, and that also influences how they cover it. It's like, I'll give you an example. Before we go too far into this, I think the way the tech media handles the update situation around Android is an embarrassment of integrity. It is absolutely embarrassing how poor they hold Google's feet to the fire in any way at all. If iOS or any Apple device had the level of issues that an Android device has at shipping,
Oh, they'd fry the balls in a batter.
it would be the top story on Tech Meme for a month. It would be reposted to Slashdot 3 times a day. It would be on the top of Hacker News, and
But
everybody
to
in there would be.
I mean, Ars Technica and TechCrunch in particular.
No, how come? Where's the articles about the fact that people who spent $600 on an HTC One 3 months ago, 6 months ago, haven't gotten a single update? Where's the articles on that? Where's the articles on these walking security disasters?
So you do get those, right? Every quarter, you get another Android, or Department of Homeland Security says Android is risky.
But the tech press just totally lets it all slide. They don't ever
They
hold
just
them.
reprint the government's warning.
They don't hold their feet to the fire. They don't. This is just apparently a total non-issue for them. And then it is compounded by all of the slack jaws out there that, just load a ROM. You can just load a ROM. Yeah, let me go tell my mom to load a ROM. Yeah, that's going to work real good, right? I mean, it's so frustrating. And so that is the angle where there is a bit of fanboyism that influences.
Let's dig into this for a second, though.
Okay.
So this case I'm citing in particular, Ars Technica, rather than writing their own article about, what was it, 2 months ago, where DHS found an incredibly wide security hole in Android.
Yeah.
And as is not their nature, decided to make it public knowledge because I guess it was that risky. They published the release about it, warning companies and individuals, to kind of
and it was sort of
aware.
Like, are you talking now? There was a notice went out about vulnerabilities in Android, and there was a notice that went out like something like 75% of mobile malware targets Android. They released 2 separate.
So I'm talking about the notice about the particular malware, not the statistic.
Okay.
Where Homeland Security just straight came out and said there was this threat that companies and individuals should address. All the tech press, and I'm thinking in particular of Ars and TechCrunch, did was reprint the notice. No analysis, nothing deeper than that. When their iOS's contacts were able to be exploited by idiots who run the company called Path, that was front page news for a week, even though all you could exploit was just simply get someone's contacts, rather than an actual severe system level exploit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of the dichotomy. But is it your opinion that just reprinting the government notice isn't enough?
No, I think it's more about when they're talking features and they're talking about when you're looking at the phones, it's just an element of the ecosystem that is just kind of just tucked. Nobody talks about it. It's tucked under the rug. Nobody talks about it.
All right, so who do you think they should be taking to task? Do you think it should be Samsung and HTC?
Everybody. I mean, because they all have to work together. I mean, Samsung needs to work with Google to fix the problem. And, I will couch this by fully acknowledging that part of the reason why they don't make a big stink about it is apparently most consumers don't notice, right? Like, if I just wanted to be zen about the whole thing, this HTC One would last me for years, right?
Right.
Without ever receiving a single update. Is there a risk of exploitation? Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. But as far as average Joe consumer goes, it would serve the purpose until my next phone needed to be purchased. It's just, it doesn't need to be that way. It shouldn't be that way.
What I'm seeing in particular with Android is the responsibility to secure the devices. If it's not a personal device, it's actually falling onto the IT departments of companies. What's really interesting is now it's just another reason not to adopt Android.
Yeah, and
Right.
that's not super scalable. It's not great.
Right. These IT admins, let's be honest, nothing against them, but they're mostly Windows guys, right?
Right. And we see when this came along and users started getting laptops,
Yeah.
Windows NT came along, and then they quickly evolved out this group policy system to try to give IT administrators a global way to standardize security and lockdown. And obviously, not 100%, but Android doesn't quite have anything like that. There's a few vendors like VMware and others that are working on solutions that you deploy. I guess, what I go back to is I guess, really to me, if you're going to go Android, it seems your best bet is to go unlocked, and if you can, get a play edition, because then you have at least a year or so of updates. I even got burned on that. I had a Play Edition Nexus before it was called the Play Edition. It was just back when Google was selling phones, like for the first time, or the second time actually. I bought my phone. I only received updates for 9 months, and then they switched to Android 4, and they discontinued updating my Nexus device. So it's not even a silver bullet when you buy it from Google directly. But at least in that case, you don't have the vendor bloatware, and you have at least some updates for a while. And I think so. I think the problem is you can't buy that in the store. You don't go down to AT&T.
Right. I'm trying to think of where you would get that.
You got to go to play.google.com
and pay $650 or more.
Well, I mean, don't you think people should pay for what things are worth?
Okay, but my mom is not going to pay $650 for a phone if she goes to Verizon, who's charging her whether she takes the subsidy or not.
Yeah. See, I wish people would. I wish people would. I wish people would pay full price, because I think it would change everything. I think it would change the dynamics of the market. It would change a lot of the labor situation. I think it would change the whole app store model. The value on these apps would be. I think people's perspective would change.
Right, but that's like when I say I wish Google would find a way to break the GPL and make Android lockdown so they can force the manufacturers to maintain it and update it. It can't be done, right? And that's going to fuel a lot of hate mail.
You just blew my mind with that. Well, we sit in the pre-show, and then I'm going to get to our first sponsor.
Right.
We sit in the pre-show, and this may be a good setup for the iOS discussion, is if I said to you, iOS is locked down, and I just blanket statement, iOS is the most locked down mobile platform, what do you interpret that to mean? What's like the most common?
What people seem to think is that you can't do what you want to do in terms of software.
Right, the App Store's locked down, right?
Right.
It's a lockdown App Store. You can't sideload apps, and Apple is very stingy about what they allow in. But the flip side of that is the Play Store is full of absolute junk. I have crapped up my phone with I bought like a $4.99 Star Trek app, thinking, first of all, it's a Star Trek app. It's $4.99.
And if they're charging $5,
yeah. Loaded my machine up. I got pictures in my notifications, and I would get sounds. I got icons on my desktop for more crapware. And the first time I didn't realize one of them was, I thought it was an app I load, and I just hadn't tried yet because I had never seen this happen on Android. And so I pushed it, and then it installed more crap. Okay, this is all from the Play Store. So you can talk about lockdown, but if you're going to talk about, the App Store being the quantifiable thing that locks down a phone, then Firefox OS and Ubuntu Touch are the most locked down mobile operating systems ever, because they don't have an App Store. And the only way you can get apps on there is HTML5. Well, guess what? The iPhone has Safari.
Right.
So I think people need to think about it.
Engine. Well, what's funny is I was on my Nexus 7 the other night, kind of trying to see, I've been using it a little more, reacclimating to it. And, as I often do, I got a little bored at night, and I was like, okay, let me find a game. There's nothing.
Oh, there's some games in this Play Store.
There's nothing that isn't either already on iOS.
Well, yeah.
Or, first of all, the top ranking charts on the Android store are awful.
Dude, there's some Sonic games on there that are great, though.
I've already bought all of those months ago, of course.
Yeah, me too.
I buy those on every platform.
Yeah.
That's basically all I play, though.
Yeah.
But it's all these shovelware freemium games.
Yeah, it's real
by the same 4 developers. And there was an article I read this week Um, hmm. I think it was like Google doesn't want your iOS port anymore.
Good, good. Google should, we need some good Android only. I mean, I know there's some. I feel like the game situation on Android is actually the best it's been in well ever.
Oh, okay. This is from the Penny Arcade report. Google Play doesn't want your favorite iOS game, and other reasons why Android sucks for indies.
What?
Oh, this is a good article, actually. Linking it in the chat.
All right.
Now, to be fair, the reasons come down to Google Play's store ranking algorithms don't seem to favor newer apps where iOS is due.
Right. Oh, okay. I have noticed that. Like all the recommended stuff usually is
It's pure downloads rather than downloads scaled for time.
Yeah.
There is a certain number of companies, and if you look closely at the game section on Google Play, who are making the same crappy shovelware freemium games and kind of have a monopoly on the charts. Also, and I don't know what Google could ever do about this, and it's a little unfair that Penny Arcade blames them for it, but let's see, one of the great quotes out of this is, if you get a support request from an Android user, you're best just to ignore it.
Oh, wow.
Because of the fragmentation issues.
Now, is that fair, though? Don't you feel like, I feel like if you're going to make it on Android, then you need to be prepared to support the users who buy it.
So here's the thing. This isn't the first one of these we've seen since the show started.
No. In fact, I almost feel like we see one every month or two.
Right. So they can't all be full of shit, right? It's just not possible.
Right. I mean, I do agree with you there. And, in my experience working in a few projects that were actually all just web-based, even there we had some issues with the way that certain things would be accelerated and whatnot.
And I've done some commercial facing Android work, but to be honest, for the most part, most of the stuff I do on Android is company internal deployments.
I guess I feel like it's gotten to the point though where iOS also suffers from this issue, because you have a lot of iPad 1s and 2s out there, and they definitely handle complicated HTML5 apps differently. Like they just do not. I mean, there's different resolutions. I mean, if you only chase the last 3 iterations of all the iOS devices, you're pretty solid. But if you want to actually support what's the millions that are out there, you have to start doing some backflips to make that work too.
Right, but to be fair, usually the right move on iOS is to only support the last 3 devices. I mean, almost nobody wants you to support older iOS versions.
Yeah.
I mean, right now people are talking about 6 and 7 and dropping 5.
Right. Yeah. Well, and they can too. That's the thing.
Right.
The iPhone 4 is going to get iOS 7.
So I just want to kind of respond to something in chat. AxeW, he's basically, I'll rephrase this, saying that devs shouldn't complain if they're ignoring Android, that they don't, I guess, get fair treatment from Google. The problem is if you're a small developer and you're putting a lot of your budget into a project, your relationship with your vendor cannot be a Python script. And that's something where Google constantly fails at.
Yeah, you got to really underscore this point, too, because the way it's set up is it's a system that really kind of benefits the really large shops that have the weight behind them, that have the sway and have the resources.
Where they can just get a rep, yeah.
Yeah. When it comes down to the small shop, like maybe one guy's in charge of submitting it to the marketplace, it is really it's one of the reasons I've had issues with their app side too. Is the support is not great. They're not. That is definitely their weakest area there.
Well, I was a big Google Checkout user for a while, and I had to stop using it because of this change to Google Wallet. They seem to no longer be allowing corporations to use Google Checkout.
But on the flip side, don't you have this same problem on the iOS App Store and on the Microsoft Marketplace?
So, with Microsoft, no, you can get someone to talk to you.
Oh,
pretty easily. Actually,
imagine that.
Yeah.
But on iOS, right? Isn't that kind of like a black box sometimes?
They will talk to you, but they will talk to you not when you call them. They'll call you back, and they'll never write. They will never communicate in writing.
Oh, really? They like to do it all by the phone, huh?
It's all plausible deniability.
Surprise, surprise.
And you really don't get firm answers. Like I had a situation about 3 months ago with a client. There was some question about what constitutes a proper in-app purchase, and I thought I was part of some Deep Throat style conspiracy here. Like I was like, well, see, I can't really say, you understand, but that might be okay, but I can't promise it. Like, well,
Like they're
in that
paranoid
case-
about setting precedent or something.
right? They don't want to give you a firm answer. And to be fair, given the way they get so much crap in the press, it's not inconceivable to think that someone could record the phone call and like send it to TechCrunch.
Yeah.
Right. So I understand why straight answers and communications in writing don't exist.
If they would just make the rules more clear and more public, they wouldn't have
Well,
this
they don't
problem.
want the rules to be clear because they want discretion to just
Exactly.
do that.
To play favorites.
Let's I
They want discretion to play favorites.
right
To
but
bend
so
the
does
rules for the New York Times or to bend the
Right.
rules for whoever, right? I mean, that's,
it's funny as a contractor because I have all different kinds of clients, and a lot of them have no relationship with Apple at all, and it's just the normal mass washes. Your app will take 2 weeks to get approved.
Yeah.
Right. And I have a few who have very good relations with Apple, and that's a very different ballgame.
Right. They're in, right? I mean,
What?
they're like, somebody's got them starred as a VIP in their inbox.
Well, they have a rep.
Yeah.
I mean, I really can't stress how important having a rep is.
Yeah.
To be fair, I don't have a rep, right? I have.
You don't get to pick. They just decide when you've earned a rep.
Well, no, it seems to go by if you're prestigious, if your company is, for instance, the New Yorker probably has a rep, right?
Yeah. All right, Mr. Dominic. Well, before we get into our main topic, which I know we're actually building to right now. We're about to slip right into it, actually, as the word. I want to just take a moment and thank our first sponsor, because these guys are actually some of the people trying to change up some of the things that I have big problems with, and that is Ting.com. Ting is mobile that makes sense, my mobile service provider since the beginning of the year. And I'm really happy because Ting is a couple of things up front that sort of change the entire customer mobile service provider dynamic. Number one, no contracts and no early termination fees. So you buy these phones, you're not tied into a contract, you're not locked down. That is fantastic. Also, Ting allows you to bring your own device. And if you go to coderradio.ting.com, you'll save $25 off your first device. And as we talk about these things today, I think we need to be more aware of how important this mobile service is. Honestly, what started back in the 90s as a way for me to text my girlfriend back when SMS was brand new, has now developed into a critical communications tool for my business, for my personal life, and staying in touch with my family when I'm out on the road. Things like that really have sort of transformed something that was originally I did not take very seriously into now that's something that's just absolutely critical to me. And the problem with this is a lot of these companies are doing it wrong. I think we all know the big names out there, and we all know the mistakes they constantly make. And Ting is shaking up the industry here, and they are shifting the balance of power back to the mobile user. And now here's one of the things they've done recently, because Ting has a lot of great devices that you can grab out of contract and you don't have to worry about being locked into anything. And all of these devices include hotspot or tethering. There's no hidden line items. You can have unlimited devices on one account with pooled minutes. And if you don't use the device that month, no big deal, because with Ting, you only pay for what you use. And what that means is if I have a Sierra Overdrive Pro sitting in my drawer, I don't have gadget guilt. I don't have gadget guilt because if I don't use it that month, I'm not paying a bunch of money. I'm just paying for the $6 for the line. Bob's your uncle. But look, it just got better. And it's just in time for the holidays, friends. Ting is going to help you get out of that contract. If you're in one of those mobile service providers who doesn't do transparent posts on their blog about their business and how they work, who doesn't have hangouts with their customers so that way they can ask questions directly to the executives, does your mobile service provider do hangouts? Because mine does, and that's really cool. If you want to get out of one of those old school telcos who's been around really since the 1800s in one iteration or another, go to coderradio.ting.com, and while you're over there, go to /ETF. They have an early termination relief program now. They're going to help you soften the blow on that early termination. They'll pay up to $75 of your early termination per device, and it's super easy. All you have to do, you pick your Ting device, you go port your number over on Ting, which is all done through the web interface, very easy to use, nice UI, clean, and super fast, and then you submit your claim. You submit your ETF claim. And Ting will go 25%. Boom, they're going to take 25% off that ETF. That's $75. Pow, we'll just knock that right off, help you move over. When you look at the Ting savings calculator, they have this how much would you save, right? When you go to coderradio.ting.com, you click that link, put your bill in there, say how many lines you have, or maybe how many lines you want. Maybe you need to add another line. I mean, when you're only paying for what you use, because Ting's just going to take your minutes, your text messages, and your megabytes, and they're just going to add them up at the end of the month in whatever bucket you fall into. That's all you're going to have to pay. You're going to be blown away at the savings when you go use that savings calculator. But then when you consider the fact we're going to take $25 off your first device or $25 off your first month if you bring a device, and they're going to help you get out of your early termination contract, wow, now we're really starting to talk about an amazing deal with an amazing mobile provider. So go to coderradio.ting.com, go check them out. They are fixing some of these major problems out there. Love these guys. So thanks to Ting for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. Okay, Mr. Dominic, can we start before we get back into the iOS stuff? Because I feel like maybe we're wearing people out a little bit. So can we just take a little refresher and maybe talk about just the device briefly? I just wanted to get your opinion on, we have a new iPhone. I don't really have anything to say about the C, but we have a new iPhone S. It's got a fingerprint reader. It's got this motion chip in it, and it's got this new A7 processor that's 64 bits. What say you?
So it's funny. My initial reaction was, because I thought the big thing was going to be that the C was going to be the big product, where it was going to be maybe $400 or $300 off contract.
Right.
And that would be their market share play. They obviously have decided not to do that.
Right.
So I was kind of disappointed at first because I expected something more. And then the emails started flooding in because there was something very basic in Tim Cook's very boring presentation that I missed.
I did not watch it.
I watched it. I saw it live streamed and I saw parts of it. It was.
So you had clients that picked up on something that they.
Right. The emails started flying in. 64 bits.
Well, see now, okay. Well, I know I'm not this guy. I don't mean to be this guy, but my understanding is the ARM processor does not suffer from the same limitation that the x86 processor does. The ARM processor, 32 bits, can actually address a terabyte of memory, if I am correct. So what's the big gain to going 64-bit?
The big gain is right now nothing. Right.
Okay. Well, gotta get one.
So, well, let's be fair. If you think about the PC, and there was another show that went into this, and I forgot the name of the show, but during the 32 to 64-bit on PCs, the real overnight advantages were not because of the bits. It was because they got to rewrite the crappy instruction set with what they know now, right?
Ah.
So the original ARM specification was not really designed for these, what I would argue are more computer than phone now, right? What I would say are, in fact, your personal computer. Now, Apple doesn't tell you how exactly what they did. It seems like, if their claims are to be believed, they've probably optimized some of the instructions that weren't quite there. Right?
Yeah.
Now, that's all very boring, very low level, and since Apple's never going to tell you, could even be false, right? The whole twice as fast thing that they kind of said could all just be marketing speak. At the end of the day, though, what it's going to come down to is iPads, but more memory. Not in this year, not next year, but in 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, I was thinking this is a bigger thing, with the bigger deal for the iPad.
Yeah, this is not unless you're. I mean, there are a few exceptions, right? I mean, obviously they brought out the Infinity Blade guys, and really high end games on the iPhone 5S, of course, and on the next iPad, of course. But unless you're, for everybody else, this isn't going to mean much right now.
I think the most interesting thing that's happening now with Apple and the iPhone isn't, what they do with the colors, isn't what they do with the design or the fact that the background now has parallax. Right. I think what is interesting is you have one company who is making their own chip based on the ARM design reference, I find that to be a huge, huge advantage. I mean, I got to imagine now Samsung gets close, right? But they don't own all of the bits like Apple does, top to bottom. And
my crazy conspiracy theory is that this is step 1 in a 5-step plan, where step 5 is Macs start running Apple's own ARM chips.
Oh man, I hope not. I mean, I want x86 on my desktop, and I'm cool with ARM in my mobile device, and never should the two meet, because I just feel like I'm never going to be the guy that can use that. I guess that's when I'll retire. Now here's what I'm wondering: does 64 bits give you better photo? Because one of the things I picked out from the specs is when you're taking photos, the A7 chip in real time is analyzing them and combining them, in the chip at the chip level. So is that 64-bit goodness happening there because you're able to do more, graphics crunching or what? I mean, otherwise, why are they even listing as a feature? Why not just slip it in there?
Okay, so here's the thing you have to understand with these. Whenever Apple goes into tech specs, they're kind of magical, right?
Yeah, and silly.
I would not draw a direct correlation between it being a 64-bit architecture and better pictures. If you want to talk about better pictures, we could talk about the flash. And Frank, I'm not really a photography guy, so
see, that's one of the most important features on the camera, or for me on the phone.
Of course,
yeah.
And that's why I'm very cautious in saying that it is going to be so much faster. In a lot of ways, I think the 5S is probably the most significant upgrade they've ever done to this device and to the whole iOS family when the iPad surely gets the same processor in a month, right? However, I don't think it's going to be one of those things that we see immediately, again, with those few exceptions of high-end games.
So I want to point out, maybe I'll just mention, because I'm sure some podcast listeners are thinking this too. So my comment about Samsung not owning the whole stack is I'm talking one of the most important components is Android here. Samsung can bolt onto Android, and we all hate it. We all hate it. It is a bastardization of the operating system. As an open source advocate, it hurts me what Samsung does to Android. As a consumer, it frustrates me what Android does to Samsung. As an IT person, it insults me what Samsung does to Android. So in my mind, Samsung does not own the entire stack. Yes, Samsung makes some chips, and Samsung buys a license of Android so they can put the Google stuff in it, and Samsung brings the two things together, and they do a pretty great job at it. But they do not own it top to bottom. And I don't think people acknowledge what you get here is, as a result, we directly have this updates problem solved. We have the ability to really lean on carriers, so there's not carrier crap loaded on every iPhone device, right? And this is, let's be honest, why is Samsung starting up their own dev conference that doesn't include Google? Why is Samsung creating their own mobile operating system? There's a reason why Samsung is working on these things.
Leverage.
Yeah.
Right. And I just want to address something in the chat because I know it's going to be emailed a lot. Shane is absolutely right that 64 bits at its most basic level just refers to the amount of memory that the device can access. But my major point in what I'm saying is that if we remember the way it happened in the PC world, that the processor makers got to rewrite the instruction set and fix some of the mistakes they'd made in the past because they were a little short-sighted. That's where a lot of your performance increases came from. Seems like that's what's happening here, but again, with all this, Chris, this is why talking about the more spec side of the Apple devices is very hard, because they never tell you exactly what they did.
Right, you got to wait for the people to tear it down. And
my argument is that if we're to be believed that there's such a big performance increase, let's just say that's true, right? Let's just assume it. To me, it's far more likely that the only relationship between that and 64-bit than it just being 64-bit is that they got to go back and fix some dumb mistakes they made in the 32-bit version in the instruction set.
And also Apple builds, the way they've done this so far is, so the A5 chip rolls out and the A6 chip rolls out in the current phone. Now the A7 chip's going to roll out, and then next year the iPod Touches get it and the Apple TV gets it. And this year the Apple TV is going to get the A6 chip, right? So Apple will build a chip today for use that is going to, they continue to manufacture for 3 to 4 years in their older devices.
And we're going to see in probably a month if all these claims about speed are true, or is it simply that, yes, it can address more memory.
Have you tried building anything from Xcode for 64-bit?
So I couldn't at the time because I needed to do a submission.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's a beta version of Xcode.
I'm curious just to see what the workflow is that for developers.
I imagine it's a drop down.
So you're going to have to submit a separate build just for the iPhone 5S?
No, right. So right now, no one is probably going to be doing 64-bit.
Yeah.
Because your 32-bit will, of course, run on your 64-bit system.
Right, and they're going to run 32-bit apps.
Right. This is why this isn't going to be a thing, really, for a few months for most people.
So then they have nothing. I mean, if they're listing 64-bit as one of the major features on their page...
Well, it's the same thing. Someone buys a laptop with 16 gigs of RAM. They're not actually using 16 gigs of RAM, right?
Let me tell you. I am currently using... I'm only using 5 gigs of RAM right now.
I was going to say, you might even be one of the exceptions.
I'm only using 5.
Right. Speaking of unwise purchases. I have a confession, Father.
Oh, I know what you're about to say. Hold it right there. I want to just get our second sponsor all taken care of because this is going to be a great little. We're going to have some fun with this one. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a great deal, and I want to mention it right now. Go to GoDaddy.com and use the code CODER199 when you're checking out. You're going to get a .com for $1.99. Listen, we've got a link in the show notes. It just pre-charges your shopping session if you can't remember CODER199, but you should. If you can't remember that, you need more coffee. Listen, CODER199, $1.99.com, you guys, is absolutely incredible, and GoDaddy is rolling out a bunch of new products to make people who work in groups and small businesses have even more efficient workflows when using GoDaddy. That's really about to get kicked up, if you will, to another notch. But when I think of a .com, Mr. Dominic, do you remember how much you paid for the very first .com you ever bought? I think my
way too much.
Yeah, I think my personal one was. I mean, I can't remember. It was definitely. I remember like final price checkout and everything was like over $300. But I've had clients who have very short domains that have spent thousands of dollars. So now here we are in 2013. You can get a .com for $1.99 and additional years. Just $9.99 after that. That's a really good deal, too. Even if it was just $9.99, it just blows my mind. So go over to GoDaddy.com or use the link in our show notes. Use the code CODER199 when you check out. And helps keep us on the air when you use our sponsors. And if you got anything, you need a .com to forward to your Google Plus page, get it. You want a better URL for your Facebook page. Whatever it is, I don't care. I'm not going to judge. Just go kick it up a notch. Get a fire in your belly and go get a .com for $1.99 with CODER199. Thanks to GoDaddy, the world's #1 domain name registrar and longtime supporters of the Coder Radio program. Okay, so what did you end up purchasing?
Okay, so
confession time, Mr. Dominic.
Okay, so it's not my fault. I had no choice.
Okay.
I did what I had to do. So you know how I've been like buying cheapo systems or relatively low-powered Macs because I was waiting for the MacBook Pro.
Yeah, sure.
And then I got sandbagged by a trash can.
Right.
So I kind of have been in a holding pattern. And have you heard of SSDs, Chris?
I have. I'm a big fan of those.
So am I. So I was sitting on my main Mac compiling a large Mac project, and it took a while. And, everything was pretty slow. It's an older, lower-powered Mac Mini.
Spinning hard drive or SSD in that?
Spinning 5400 too.
Oh.
Really bad, right? So
that's people don't know how bad that is. That's like bad.
If you got used to an SSD at all,
it's like going back to a horse and buggy.
It's awful.
It's just so slow. You could might as well have a Pentium 4 in that thing. You have CPU starvation.
So I ended up configuring a Mac Mini with an SSD.
It's negative in the freedom
which I then
dimension.
He's a jackass.
So there's two strange things here. One, they do not carry those in the store. Which seems idiotic, but you would think they'd carry at least one of every configuration.
I mean, so you just need a rig to run Xcode, right? The Mini's probably a good choice. The only problem is they haven't updated it in a year.
That's why I didn't want to do it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm thinking the Mini would be up by the summer, right? By next summer,
probably October.
Don't tell me that. Don't say things like that.
Yeah, there's probably gonna be a new iMac in October too, I would imagine.
See, I'm not an iMac fan because I've had one years ago and it got some kind of shadowing on the screen.
Oh yeah, yep, I got that same one at the studio.
That's a 27-inch thing, 27 pounds.
They actually eventually rolled out a repair program, but I missed the window on that. And yeah.
Well, even just carrying that thing to,
yeah. Well, so have you gotten it yet?
No. So this is what's weirder. I don't know if you've ever ordered an Apple product to your house and had the FedEx guy not knock on the door and be a dick and just say you missed the delivery.
Yeah, when I got the iPad, that happened.
Yeah. So I actually said, all right, I'll pick it up at Freehold, which is my most local, I should say, Apple store. It's about an hour away. I'm thinking, all right, so maybe I'll pick it up next week. I did not know that they still won't have it till the 25th. Apparently, it takes longer for them to get it to the store than to your house.
That's weird. Maybe they have to do it in a separate shipment or something.
It is weird. So I was kind of going to call the store and be like, hey, do you have one in stock? We could just rectify the order. So I feel pretty bad about this.
Oh, really?
Well, because there's the whole, they're going to update it soon.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And
Well, that's always the problem. I mean, that's the problem with phones. That's the problem with
yeah,
computers. I've gotten to the point now where I mean, I don't know. I shouldn't say that because I do know what you mean. You know what? In fact, System 76 is supposed to have a new computer out today. I need a new rig to do my encoding because I'm doing it all on my laptop, and it's performance wise, this Bonobo has been fine, but I've literally killed 3 laptops in a row.
that's the problem. I keep cheaping out, and these machines are not usable when I'm done with them.
Yeah, I mean because they
Right.
run so hot for so long that they
That was
just
starting. So the reason I did it now is I've been using a MacBook Air in the meantime, and it just started overheating and kernel panicking on me.
Well, see, isn't the Mac Mini going to overheat on you too because it's such a small, tight, enclosed machine? See, this is why I wanted a tower
Right.
because
Yes.
the ventilation is so much superior, and I can also replace fans and stuff like that.
So I mean, what option did I have? There is no tower.
Oh yeah, on the Mac side, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That's kind of why I ended up at the Mini.
Right. Yeah, well, that is a problem. And well, I guess the Mac Pro, the trash can's supposed to have a good cooling solution, but do you want to pay $4,000 for a machine that really, it's
Right.
$1,000 job because really you don't need a metal enclosure, you just need raw CPU.
But listen, okay, so I just pulled up the receipt. So
And I/O
let's
display.
read some specs. It's a 2.3 quad core Intel i7, 8 gigs of RAM.
This is the Mini here.
This is the Mini.
Okay.
256 gig SSD.
Oh, okay, nice. How
Now
much?
that
How
ran-
much was that? Do you remember how much that SSD was alone? Because they charge so much for those SSDs.
It was like $300. I was like, you guys are. I looked up if I could install it myself, and then I saw the effort that goes into that, and I was like, no.
Yeah, that's the thing is you gotta crack this little tiny thing open with like a painter's thing. I've upgraded the memory in one of these things before for a client, and I had to get a paint scraper and
Yep.
jam it in there.
So I've done the memory. And I probably will bump this to 16 gigs.
Yeah, on these ones the thing just
Yeah.
screws off on the bottom.
You just twist it.
Yeah,
So
that's
there's
a little
yeah.
easier. Yeah.
So that ran me, let's see, 1,199. But of course, Apple, being the good government citizen that they are, charged me sales tax online, which is great, bringing the total up to 1,200, basically 1,280.
So this is a mid range i7.
Right.
Here's the problem. Here's why you're gonna have remorse is they're gonna roll out Haswell, and Haswell is a lot better on temperature.
Is it? See, what I've read, the reason I went ahead and did it is
that's what I've
Haswell's
been
better
told.
on battery.
Well, but you're
Right.
better on battery because you use less power, and if you use less power, you produce less heat.
I hope that's not true. And to be fair, my current Mini, the only problem with it is that it's old, and it has the spinning disk, which is incredibly slow to compile large projects.
Yeah, that's no good.
And that's really what it really comes down to I/O blocking. It was
I
the
think-
whole problem.
The Haswell chip, other than the temperature thing, is probably not going. You probably wouldn't even notice it. Performance difference. But
I'm betting I won't. And just the
you cannot be the only developer using Xcode facing this dilemma, though. This is probably one that almost everyone's facing. And
so so I kind of discussed this with some Mac and iOS developers that I know locally, and there seems to be an acceptance of that your Mac dev machines are now going to be virtually disposable. So once a year, you're just going to be buying a new one. Which,
you're either
given-
a Mac Pro dev or video guy, or I think they see the iMac as the perfect development machine, right? And the Mini is sort of like appeasing to people like you.
Listen, I would get the iMac, but lugging that thing to Freehold when the screen goes is not something I'm doing again. I mean, maybe, but the iMac specs aren't that much higher if you really want to go into it.
No, I totally agree with you.
I mean, what's the difference? Okay,
No, if you've
the
already got a
screen-
screen and stuff, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, I think maybe you're right. Maybe they just see they have different categories and people they'll yearly, like, I don't know. I don't know what, see their whole business and makes me nervous because they just seem to give two craps about the
Bro,
desktop
market.
machines.
And one of the other things I do with my workstation is obviously I'm used to running Windows VMs and Ubuntu VM, right? So it needs to be a pretty significant machine. And maybe that's something I can't do anymore.
I've just gone dedicated hardware in a lot of cases.
I might. I mean, at home, I have my dedicated Dell, which is fine, but I mean, I really don't want to have my whole tool chain be like 3 different machines
I
or
hear
4
you.
different machines.
I hear you. Yeah.
That's a big cost too.
It has crossed my mind that when the new Mac Pros, the trash cans sell, that it's a good chance the old Tower Pros will go on sale, maybe like on used sites or something. And I was thinking about maybe just picking up a couple and like using those instead of Hackintoshes if they come out super cheap.
I think that would make sense for you, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's weird. I'm in this position now, and to be fair, a developer. Okay, so $1,000 a year isn't bad, right? You can easily swallow that. But it's just such a weird idea. If I'm used to keeping PCs for like 3 years, then now it's going to be a disposable kind of thing.
Well,
Because,
I'd like to hear what people out there think, because here's my
Yeah.
other thought is maybe their thought process is computers are fast enough now that people don't need to update every few years, so we don't need to update it several times a year.
No, I know what their thought process is for developers. I don't think I can talk about it yet, though. They have a different solution that's interesting.
Like a program kind of thing.
No, we can talk about it privately. It's weird.
Okay. All right. Well, should we?
Because Chris Fisher is good in NDA with Apple, right, Chris?
Yeah. Should we? Speaking of NDAs, so iOS 7 has been under NDA, and you got to wonder if maybe that's because people are going to react very strongly. Do you want to talk a little bit about it?
So the reactions to iOS 7 have been fairly negative, even from the Apple Defense Force, right?
The Apple Defense Force. Yep.
It's been fairly, and now they've kind of gone back. And to be fair, Apple has changed a number of things from WWDC. I actually like iOS 7 now that they changed a few
But
things.
don't you understand? We're supposed to hate everything Apple does. Remember? And also remember.
Well, it addresses a lot of
negative
my
in the freedom
things about iOS
dimension.
from 6 and 5.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Even though it's negative in the freedom dimension. What are those? What would you?
I'm like the Beelzebub of the freedom dimension hell. I'm like, I love it.
Did we finish up all the? Before we get into that, did we finish up all the stuff you wanted to say on the iPhone 5s as far as like fingerprint?
Oh, we didn't talk about the fingerprint at all.
What do you think?
So I've seen a lot of super nerdy people taping their glasses together on Hacker News and saying, "Ooh, that's not super secure. There's an obvious exploit." Yes, it will be exploited, but for the 50% of us who don't have a password at all, something will be better than nothing.
That's a good point.
And then I've heard they don't give devs access to it because they'd have to be crazy. Right. I mean, this is the one case where I'm like, yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Because I guess from what I grokked, because I was trying to read up on this for TechSnap, an email that came in, is that it's actually more like a token-based system where the authentication is done directly to the CPU from the Touch ID, and then the CPU provides a yes/no signal to the OS. So it's just the OS never gets the fingerprint, never even sees the hash. It just gets the yes/no. All the hashing is done on chip and everything like that.
Yeah, the data is never in user space is how it seems to work, right?
And this is a great example of owning the iOS, the chip technology, and all of that there, right? Because I mean, look at the way they're able to implement an authentication solution in OS by doing that authentication in chip. That's pretty interesting.
And I understand, like, once they figure out how to root this device or jailbreak it, yes, if someone gets your phone, they could theoretically get this, right? I have doubts if that's going to be possible.
It's also been announced during the biggest, paranoia ever in the U.S. around the whole NSA spy, and everybody, it's a walking NSA fingerprint collection machine.
So if you've ever done any teaching or been in the military or been arrested or anything like that,
got a passport, or in some states got a driver's license.
Government work,
right.
In some states a driver's license, they already have your fingerprints.
Yeah.
And also, I don't think Apple or any other large company would outright lie about where they're storing the information.
Probably not, since they're a publicly held company.
Right, and that would be a violation of SEC, blah, blah, blah.
So I think you're probably right. I think, the real solution is probably you're going to be able to turn on fingerprint and a passcode for the real paranoid, right?
So this isn't for people who are using passcodes in my mind, right? The people who are smart and are using long passcodes and are willing to take that inconvenience are better than me.
It seems like the most convenient way, as Heaven's Revenge says in the chat room, the most convenient way to add another layer of security without adding a layer of complexity. So for some people, they're going to just use only the fingerprint, and that's better than no password. And then for some people, they'll use the fingerprint and the passcode in combination, right? So that's even better. So for me, it seemed like as long as you're not too afraid about the NSA, it doesn't seem like that bad of a... And obviously, Apple thinks it works well enough to allow you to buy stuff on iTunes. So that's an indicator that they think it's going to be reliable enough.
If it works reliably, I don't know how this could be a bad thing. And I know hating on Apple is the popular thing to do, but making people even marginally more secure, in my mind, is always a good idea.
All right, well, let's go more outside the box and talk about iOS 7. So
Yeah,
I grabbed it at PAX, not to preempt, but I just want to establish. I know you've been messing with it for a while, but I've had 2 weeks with it. I went to PAX and somebody there had iOS 7, and so I played with it for a few hours. Decided to take an iPhone 5 that we have that was not really being used. It was running like an older version of iOS 6. And I put iOS 7 on here just to do some testing with our apps and the live stream and things like that after I played with it at PAX. And I've had it on here for about a week now, and I actually had a problem getting it on there. It almost bricked the phone. I was like, oh, geez. But so I've been probably using it heavily. I've used it as my phone for since Friday. And I'm curious to hear what you think about it, because I'll tell you, my initial reaction to the visual look was not positive.
Mine was not either.
Okay.
I had to do a double take because I thought I might have actually picked up someone's Fisher-Price toy.
I've never seen a launch bar at the bottom of the screen that takes up that much. It's almost like they extended the iPhone 5 just so they could have a ridiculously large dock at the bottom of the screen.
There are some questionable choices in the UI for sure.
But I hear like that felt like a big butt.
No, there's not a but. It kind of looks bad.
Okay. All right.
What's interesting is that it makes all app icons that were realistic look terrible, and they seem to have changed the size of the icons as well.
Yes. Yeah. They do seem a little different size. Yeah.
So, from a developer perspective, iOS 7, just on the public information alone, is incredibly disruptive.
I think, after that initial shock on the icons, they actually, to me, feel a little more easily recognizable, because I'm one of the person that I'm more of a glancer, where I just kind of I glance down, and like the camera icon, that actually like that. Oh, that's the camera right there. It's nice and bold. It's easy to see. The photos icon I could never find on the old iOS screen ever. Now Photos jumps out at me. Same with the App Store actually, and the settings. They all are actually, for the way my brain visually processes information, are easier for me to spot. I don't like the way they necessarily look, but I definitely am able to recognize a lot faster what they are. And that is, in a way, a nice improvement for me.
They certainly don't look bad. Well, they do.
Yeah, they don't look great. But
I mean, I would say the Safari icon in particular, but that's not...
Have you gone into Newsstand? Do you have an iOS device with you right now?
I have a phone, but I don't have any newsstand stuff on there.
Just have you gone in there? Have you looked at that?
No, I haven't.
I cannot believe Apple shipped a UI that looks like that. I mean,
fantastic.
It's really something. Now, that said, there are some things I really like about this. The new gestures work. I thought they wouldn't. The swipe up to get to like my Wi-Fi and my Play controls. Unless you're in an old app that has the old keyboard, then it doesn't work. But the fact that like there's a lot of little things, like I can turn that on and off at the lock screen, it's really nice. The new drop down for the alerts and stuff and the calendar, and it's really well done. Looks really good.
So that's the thing. I feel like they took a lot of the functional aspects from Android that they needed.
Yeah.
And just straight took them and made them look like Fisher-Price had made it.
You know what? Exactly. They took a lot of the things that when I switched to Android initially was like, oh yeah, that's so nice. And then they've put them in here with a candy coating.
Yeah.
But everything feels really fast. And even like applications feel like they load faster. The camera feels like it takes pictures. I think it does take pictures faster. It's like I expected this to be a major downgrade in performance and battery life because of all of the candy coating, all of the transparency.
Right.
Like when you get a few layers into this thing, sometimes you got 2 or 3 levels of transparency going with the background parallaxing. It's like, I don't know how they're doing it, but the battery life seems to be pretty solid too. And like there's other things they've changed in the UI, like pull down to search on any screen now. Way nice. The search function is better. Siri is better. I like the UI to Siri better too. And it does more stuff. Like I can do like a Siri, change my screen brightness to half. Yeah, and I think, yeah. And, oh, sorry. Siri, change my screen brightness. I did it earlier. Oh, yeah. So there it goes.
Okay.
And then it changes it. And it brings up little sliders so you can manually do it. There's a lot of new little features in there that are pretty great. So I'm curious, from your standpoint, from like a development standpoint, are you happy? Are you mad? Are you worried?
Okay, so here's the discussion that seems to be happening, and this is obviously all based on public data, not NDA stuff. Is that I'm okay? Sorry, someone just pinged me. iOS 7 is forcing a lot of people to make decisions that they didn't want to make. For instance, your iOS 6 app almost definitely looks like crap on iOS 7.
Mm-hmm. It's not
Conversely,
so
for
bad
iOS
though, honestly. Like I'm thinking like the Audible app, because it goes full screen, so you don't see the other iOS stuff.
It's pretty bad.
It's noticeable, yeah.
I mean, depending if you were into your own skeuomorphic design and were heavily designed, it's pretty bad.
You're screwed.
In terms of the other side, right? So if you go full hog 7, and I'm just talking about UX here, you may look a little out of place. Now, for me, I tend not to encourage people to do these ridiculous skinned UIs. Because usually they're skinning them with bitmap images, right?
Yeah.
Which all they do is bloat the app, and every time these statistics are done, the larger your app, the more likely you are to be deleted by the user. So I'm always encouraging people find a way to just live with something close to the native UIs, right? Obviously brand it, but you don't need to put leather-bound stitching on everything.
I guess I feel like the UI is sort of taking a lot of cues from Windows Phone.
That's what I was going to get at. It reminds me of that Metro idea where you can have your branding, you can have your colors, but you're not going to skin our UI.
I guess it feels, but I don't know about that. Like it leaves a little room for uniqueness, though. It's not quite as hardcore as just absolutely flat black color, white text. It's like I don't know if you've gotten the new Reader app that's been designed for iOS 7. There's very subtle textures in different spots, but it's done in a way to sort of help you navigate. But it's not just totally, but it's done really, really well. So there is a way to sort of give the app's design over to the overarching look of the OS, but still retain a little bit of individuality. And not like it is, whereas on Windows Phone, I've seen just very stark stuff,
So I don't want to raise the dead here, but one thing I liked about the HTC 8X and still like about it is that if you know how to use one Windows Phone app, you generally know how to use them all. Because they're all doing the same things.
I guess that to me feels like they're all limited.
They're all very boring.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. They're all very literally pulling data. But at the end of the day, that's what most apps are doing at some point, right? Pulling data from a server.
Yeah.
I feel like iOS 7 is going in that direction without making the full commitment. You can still have your own UI, but it would be unwise to not have it be inspired by Apple's new palette, new visuals.
Where the dirty side of Apple comes out too, because the people who jump on it first will get the special treatment in the App Store.
Of course, yeah. The more 7 your app looks, the better off you are.
Yep.
Unfortunately, what's going to happen is that everybody is going to do a very basic iOS 7 implementation, and then we're going to be back just like we were at 4, right? Into this 4 through 6, into this arm race of customizing the 7 widgets to get them whatever the new, right? The last big style was skeuomorphism. So I have no idea what the new style is going to be, but I'm sure for the next year or two.
Do you think now with Microsoft and Apple throwing in behind the sort of flat, and honestly, I feel like, not to get all, I don't know, hippie on this, but I kind of feel like the flat is a little more true to what it is. It's a piece of technology that's displaying me something. It shouldn't be, a leather-bound book. So flat's almost being more true to the OS. Do you think that kind of design is just? I guess we are kind of seeing it go everywhere, aren't we? I mean, we're just going to see it spread in the next year or two. You think it's just going to become like the dominant look?
I think it is, at least for a year or two. And I think it's going to be interesting because it's almost, Metro's flat is really no design, right?
Right.
I mean, if you look at the Metro store, a lot of folks aren't using designers. And to be fair, there's just not much to do in terms of design. iOS has always been the most heavily designed platform. And I'm just really curious to see, I've already seen some people where they're just taking their old UI and making the textures flat. Right? They're pulling out the textures, basically.
Mm-hmm.
They're just using the same colors but flat, and that's their new UI. Which is, I think, a half step.
I've seen also some apps that literally look like they've ported the Windows 8 buttons over. And one of them is actually featured right now by Apple. I can't remember what it was, but it was like a photo app, and it has huge blue square buttons. So some people are like going really far down the Windows 8 path.
Yeah, I think that is actually going to, ironically, I think that style will do best on Android and iOS rather than Windows. Because not everybody's going to be willing to do it, and it's going to look different.
So do you, as a developer, as a contractor now, are you going to just get work from clients because they want to change the look of their app? Like, is this just going to generate jobs for you? Is this a jobs program for Michael Dominick?
It might be. Certainly, every time the OS is updated, there's a demand for, in-track updates, right? Because obviously APIs get deprecated, things change, and you need to handle that.
Yeah.
I don't think... The one problem is that the people who would be most concerned about design have already known this and have already kind of looked into flattening, right? I don't know if there's, there hasn't been a big rush of flatten my app. Because a lot of business folks, they've invested a lot in their designs. And they're certainly not going to stop their product roadmap to redesign it because,
Yeah.
Now, I would be surprised if going forward anybody shows me anything with a textured UI again.
Yeah, that's right. Probably those designs aren't going to be submitted anymore. I mean, people are starting from scratch. So I look at it now, and I think it's funny because I find myself the most out of sync with probably my audience and the general tech community that I've ever been, because I've only used it for a few days, really. I mean, I've used it for a couple of weeks on and off, but really heavily in the last few days. But to me, as a father of 3 who really needs my phone to be a phone and something quick and reliable with good battery life, I can see so here's a few compelling features that I think Android needs to compete on that people don't really talk about very much. We talked about the press coverage. Well, here's an example. FaceTime. I know it sounds ridiculous, but FaceTime is built into the operating system, and it's just in there as a button in the contact sheet. I don't have to have Skype. I don't have to have Hangouts installed. And the thing that's fundamental about that is no one in my family has to have any of that software. See, I can get Angela to load Skype. I can get Angela to load Hangouts, but I can't get my dad to do it. I can't get my mom to do it, right? And so the fact that if they just have an iOS device, I can just push a button and do a video call and show them the really cute thing that their grandkids are doing, that's actually a compelling feature for me. Like, I'm actually like, shit, that's great. Messages. The fact that I can send somebody messages that is completely off the grid, that supports pictures, videos, read receipts, which is great, and supposedly is fully encrypted. That, to me, is a massively compelling feature. But the other thing that's great about it, and I have not used messages a lot to appreciate this, but when you message somebody on an iPhone that has an iPhone, Messages just figures out that they have messages and just automatically switches you over to the Messages service. That's awesome. That is the exact kind of thing that, like, I don't have to have I don't have to walk somebody through it over the phone. Again, that is a great feature, and I don't have to use Hangouts,
right,
which is the comparable on Android, but Hangouts is all piped through the Hangouts server, and I don't like that. There's a lot of things in here, like the really good battery life. That, to me, is a great feature. I think that's fantastic. AirPlay. You know, there is an app for Linux, Windows, and Mac called Airfoil Speakers, and it lets you run a service on your computer, and then you can send audio from the iOS device to the computer. So last night, I'm listening to a podcast in here, and I'm like, well, I'd rather listen to this on the computer speakers. I flip up from the bottom, I click AirPlay, and I'm sending the audio wirelessly to my computer and playing it through my computer's big speakers, and it sounds amazing. And it was super easy, and I know there's kind of ways to do that on Android, but it was not nearly as transparent because I did it at the OS level. So all the applications took advantage of it. That is super nice. Nothing's doing that on Android. I think there's a lot of things in iOS 7, and I guess maybe some of these are in 6, that I think techies should be intellectually honest about are really good features. And it's all done with really well done hardware, really good tight package, a great screen, and fantastic battery life. So I think if you're intellectually honest with this, it is a very competitive product.
I think it is. I mean, I'm focusing a little more on the developer story. But from a consumer point, Apple's never going to make a pop product, but that doesn't put the consumer, first and foremost.
Chromecast is not a comparable solution. It really is not. I have a Chromecast.
The what? AirPlay?
Yeah. A Chromecast is great, but if I want to send OS-level audio from any application to my computer, AirPlay dominates it. And the fact that it doesn't have to have a Chromecast, I can literally send it to a daemon on my Archbox. That's right. Awesome.
So here's kind of the negative side from the dev point of view, though. We saw Apple during the keynote at DubDub, and it's pretty much it's public knowledge, some of the stuff they've done, right? The gamepad support, things like that. We haven't seen anything come of that. We haven't seen improved iCloud storage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it's nice to talk about the UI. It's nice to say, well, look, they've added some of the annoyances, right? You can now pause audio properly from the lock screen. They didn't add
AirDrop
widgets.
is a good feature.
Right. They've added some cool stuff. But the pain points that I see day to day as a dev on their platform, the biggest one is iCloud for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to add core data syncing to iCloud, that is the number one issue. That hasn't been improved, or it doesn't appear to have been improved. Right? And I'm not even talking about iOS 7. It's just, iCloud is a service. iCloud is a web service, not a client-side thing. So where is that, right? They added, they talked about gamepad support during the keynote at DubDub. They haven't spoken about that at all.
Don't you think they will when they announce the new iPod Touches and iPads? That's more of an iPod Touch thing.
So I don't think we're going to get iPod Touches. And I don't think it's an iPad thing.
Girl, you're crazy.
Oh, I don't think so.
I mean, I might agree with you on the iPad thing, but I think on the Touch thing, you're crazy. That's what the iPod Touch is a mobile gaming machine.
Well, I don't think we're going to get a new one this year.
You're crazy.
Well, maybe I'm crazy.
Maybe you're not.
Maybe I'm not.
Maybe you're not. I was just thinking polycarbonate backs with
right. Beautiful, beautiful lime green and piss yellow. Yeah, it's just it'd be awesome.
Okay, so I mean, here I am. I'm still an Android user, but I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I feel like we have some catch up to do in some ways, and I'm wondering though, if you look at it from the cloud perspective, like you're saying, Google has really got them whipped.
Well, no, I would say Google had. So here's the thing: I almost wish they could kiss and make up, because what Google's awful at, Apple's very good at, and what Apple's terrible at, i.e., keeping any service up ever. That's what they do. Google's problem as a developer has more to do with policy, not implementation, right?
Isn't that an interesting perspective? Google's made a client device to strengthen their cloud offering. Apple has made a client device that, and then they've had to build a cloud offering.
Right.
Yeah. There's two different approaches to the problem.
But the other side of it is, as a developer, you can feel the business model difference when working with them, right? Android is just another platform for Google where they can aggregate data and get internet searches, right? The iPhone is the product for Apple. It's where they make the money.
It's the business, yeah.
Right. I almost feel like Android could have them whipped, but if they took on some of Apple's policies. Now, obviously the favoritism and stuff like that is frustrating, and I've bitched about that plenty. But there is an argument for, Chris not buying a $5 Star Trek game that infects his phone with tons of malware.
Yeah, I mean, especially for less sophisticated consumers. I mean, I'm embarrassed I made that mistake.
Yeah.
I should have known better. I mean, maybe I didn't read the reviews. I just got excited. I don't know what happened.
So I just feel like it's strange, and I almost feel like, and I know I'm going to get crap, I feel like Microsoft has a chance to be a dark horse here.
Please.
Oh,
Oh.
you know what? Should we talk about that for a minute?
You know, if they would have bought Nokia 2 years ago, I would agree with you, and they should have.
Oh, I think it's on. No, I
And
think
instead of, you know what, when they had that really adorable deal, they probably should have just sealed it completely and just purchased it. Then they could be a player. And you know, the only reason they bought Nokia is because Nokia had an Android device in the R&D shop.
supposedly they had a Nokia 1020 or 1050, the new one,
Okay.
running Android 4.3.
I would absolutely buy that phone. I would absolutely buy that phone.
But you heard about how that went down, right? So the unnamed sources close to the situation, apparently Nokia just straight up said, "Yeah, well, we've been prototyping Android since our contract is ending with you."
Yeah, that was ending next year.
And Ballmer slammed his face through a table in rage.
Yeah, that trip story was BS. That's what actually happened. Is he did a face. Nice.
Just wanted to show Stephen A. how serious he was.
Yeah, I mean, but also at the same time, Microsoft had a Surface phone in the R&D lab, and I think that underscores a huge issue. Is like that was a setup where it doesn't sound like either one of them was 100% in.
It was kind of like like a Gossip Girl situation, right? Like a frenemy situation. I just referenced Gossip Girl.
So we got to move on. We got to move on from that. We cannot we can't dwell on that. You have the C player who's hooking up with the guy that's on the downslope, and neither one of them commit 100%. So they really should have just done this buyout 2 years ago. I mean, let's be honest. The problem is just like everything in mobile, Microsoft was 2 years too late.
I don't think that it's, I've been saying this for a long time. They're not dead yet, right? Maybe it's not just a flesh wound anymore, but they're not dead yet. Because Nokia makes fantastic hardware.
Nokia did. Their chief designer left during the buyout.
That's true too.
Yeah, I mean, you got to figure.
But who do you think is going to be
any A player? I mean, I don't mean to harsh on anybody. Any of our people. I know we have people in the Microsoft audience, and I live in Washington State. But those people that live over there are not. Those A players are not going to move over here. And what are we talking? Like it's what is it? 30 or 50,000? 30,000 new.
You mean the folks from Finland?
Yeah. And they're saying 30,000 new employees are going to come over to Microsoft as part of this.
Why do they need to move to Redmond, Washington to continue running the factories they're currently running?
Why does Apple pay Johnny Ive millions of dollars not to move back to the UK every year? Literally every year, Johnny Ive threatens to move back to the UK, and every year.
If you have a full team of designers already in Finland, why would you demand that they move to the US?
How are you going to act just ask Marissa Mayer. How are you going to act as a unified company who needs to catch up and execute on every single level when your teams are spread across the world like that?
Really?
I mean, I'm just saying it's not going to be as efficient as a tight.
You're going to Yahoo me. You're going to bring out the Yahoo.
Well, if you're down and on the ground and the ref has counted to 2 and the 3 count's about to come up, I mean, you really got to scram, right? I mean, you've really got to.
So that's why you do something bold and unexpected. You don't play by the rules. You act scrappy. You get one guy.
What, you put a 55 megapixel camera in the next phone?
Here's what you do. You get one guy, one Finnish designer, right? And you make him the Johnny Ives of Microsoft. Listen, Tim Cook can't tell Johnny Ives crap, right?
You know what's going to happen?
The board is going to interfere and pick it up. I understand that.
Exactly. And the new CEO is going to come in just at the crucial moment, and everything's going to get turned on its side.
That's the thing. Microsoft needs someone who's designing these products to, for lack of a better stupid cliche, be above the law, right?
What they almost need is whoever is in absolute charge of this mobile product, they just need to put him as the CEO.
Actually, no. They need to bitch slap the Office team.
Well, that too. Well, see, the mobile CEO could change to maybe wrangle him around.
You want this? The reason RT did badly in my mind is because the Office team were little pansies.
And didn't make Office RT.
And didn't port it to Metro.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
Because the Office team has been a parasite on that company forever.
Isn't that what killed the Courier too? Because they didn't want to make OneNote?
They've killed any product that might marginally make more effort for them, right? They constantly have.
And the irony is, all of these projects would have pushed Office to where it needs to be today to be competitive with Google Docs and all of those things. Now, of course, they've made Office 360. I mean, they're making strides now, but again, 2-3 years too late.
But they only ever do anything when compelled to by someone either with the title president or chief executive. Only when they have no choice. The Office team. And you can read any of the rumor sites, has a reputation for, no, we're not doing that. And they just whip out their Excel sheet of how much money they make a year and like, no, take that courier back.
And how do you, this is a culture problem. I mean, this is like one of those things where I just don't foresee.
You know, Steven Sinofsky. Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
He-
Gorn
he's a-
lover.
Michael Dominic. He's a jerk. He's abrasive. He's mean.
I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be ELOP, and I think that's going to be a train wreck. Because here's the thing: what is Microsoft now? A devices and services company, and what is ELOP becoming the head of as part of this merger? Head of devices and services. Right. And Julie Larson Green, who was reporting to Ballmer, is now reporting to ELOP. And ELOP reports to Ballmer. So he is one move from Ballmer, and everybody else then reports to ELOP. So to me, they're already building the structure, and then they're just going to pop Ballmer off the top, and ELOP moves into the slot, and then he continues.
I did some research on ELOP just for my own curiosity. He doesn't have that presence.
No.
I mean, you could say a lot about Steve Jobs and Steve Ballmer and even Bill Gates. They maybe not the nicest people on the planet, right? But they have a presence and they believe in what they're doing. ELOP kind of seems like he left Microsoft because his role was being, minimized. So he just wanted the career promotion. And this is just going to be another career promotion for him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to his credit, Ballmer is, I think, that now that he's been, quote, retired, is still as loyal to the company and as loyal to his friend Bill than the day he joined, right?
Yeah.
No waiver at all.
If I'm the Microsoft board, and I've obviously played it safe, this is where the Microsoft board's great, because otherwise Ballmer would have been out years ago. So I'm bored, I play it safe. I look at ELOP, former Microsoftie who made it up through the ranks, so he knows how the company structure works. Went to Nokia for a couple of years, so he got a total spin up on the mobile industry, worked with one of the bigger mobile companies out there, and is now in charge of devices and services, which is number one goal for Microsoft going forward. And he's been the head of a company, Nokia, and they're bringing over 30,000 of those Nokia employees or whoever they don't lay off. To me, the board almost has to have this amazing case not to make ELOP the CEO. And okay, you combine with, let's say, if it is ELOP, that's a stinker. 2 years too late on Nokia purchase. The Office team is still a huge issue and really hasn't produced what they need to produce. And on top of that, there's just not good enough in the Windows platform to make people switch from Android.
So,
because that's what you need Android users. Because you're not going to get iPhone users or BlackBerry users, maybe BlackBerry users, but you need to get.
You're going to get BlackBerry.
Yeah, you are. But you need to get Android users. How are they going to do that? They got nothing on that.
Well, and to be fair, they're number 2 in Latin America right now. Windows Phone.
Okay.
Don't laugh. Hey,
I'm not laughing. No, I'm not minimizing. I'm just.
Europe are not the only market.
I just think that's an interesting market for them to actually succeed, and that's why I was laughing. Just because when I think of Microsoft, I don't think of Latin America. I think of the U.S.
I think of Linux and Brazil in particular. I feel like there's one poisonous tree at Microsoft, and it's called stack ranking.
Yeah.
And that's why everybody's a little conservative over there. And Chris, do you think we should explain stack ranking, or do people know what that is?
If you've got a good summary of it, yeah.
Stack ranking is at the end of every year or whatever review term you have. Some companies it's 6. I think Microsoft is like most companies where it's a year. You get ranked. You get your review with your manager, and you get either between a 1 and a 5. If you get a 1, you're fired, basically. If you get a 5, almost nobody gets those. That means you're outstanding. That's wonderful. Most people are in that 3 to 4 range. The problem is each division has to lose 10% of their personnel. They call it 10% turnover. So literally, as the manager, if you have a 10-man team, I mean, this is obviously reductionist. Not every individual team has to lose 10%, but let's just go with that. You literally have to fire somebody or have them resign.
Or have them move to a different department, so then you move your B and C players to another team.
Right. So what that does, just think about this. If me and Chris are leads in one team, right? And we know one of us is going to go. And maybe we don't want to go to Windows Phone because that seems bad. Whichever one of us is more conservative and doesn't rock the boat tends to stay. And that's really the problem. And there's been tons of articles written about this by people leaving Microsoft about how individuals, managers compete with each other, but not in the productive way of seeing who can be more innovative, in the who can just pad the bottom line the best, but short-term thinking.
So have you now convinced yourself that Microsoft isn't got a chance?
Well, no, new CEO. I mean, okay, Chris, let's think about Microsoft as a sinking ship, right? You're Bill Gates. Don't you think you're going to tell this new CEO, I'm going to leave you alone for 18 months? Rubber stamp everything you do, no question.
No.
Right? I mean, no. So you think the board who's losing money, or who maybe not losing money, but isn't making money, they're stagnant, right? The stock is stagnant. You think they're just going to sit there and be like, no, we're going to micromanage you?
I don't know if they can. I think they will try to, steer things in a way that a slow bureaucracy does. They'll not move very fast on the things they're worried about, and those kinds of things.
To me, what Microsoft needs is a whack job. Someone who comes in and is like,
right,
I'm the new boss. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're promoted. You're fired. And just, I mean, it's going to be horrible because what I'm suggesting is a big layoff. And then hire new people. Hire people that are applying to jobs at startups. Forget these ridiculous quizzes during interviews, right? Manhole covers.
When
bullshit.
I look at Microsoft as a whole, this is not the direction they're going. They are actively fighting for the immigration reform, so that way they can, when they need to hire somebody, they can do it through that system. I think this is what they should do. This is not what they're doing.
Well, they need to get rid of old thinking.
Not going to happen. Yeah, Google needs to ship every new version of Android out to every device that can run it within a few weeks. Okay. You know what I'm saying? I mean, these are things that are not going to happen.
We may not like what Google's doing, but Google's making an ass ton of money. Microsoft, at least in their areas where they're weak, are losing money.
Yeah.
And email Paul Thurrott and ask him what he thinks of the Xbox division and how their balance sheet looks. Because one of the benefits of being Microsoft is you bury costs in this whole devices and services thing. You can't really tell who's doing what anymore. I'm just sad again.
I know. Well, so I want to should we begin to wrap this sucker up?
Wrap this baby up.
All right. Well, I want to maybe just capture any, since this is the official iOS 7 edition of Coder Radio, any final thoughts? Any predictions? Anything like that?
I mean, they're going to sell a shit ton of them.
You think the S will do well?
I think the S will do amazingly well because Gold member and all those kind of people will buy that Gold edition. Because it's go.
I mean, we've talked about Android and Google and Microsoft once again, but it is funny because all of these developers, all of these companies are on this cadence now that sort of developers have to tune themselves to, in a way, because, we'll have Google I/O again next year, and we'll be talking about all the new stuff on Android that affects developers. And
when does Google I/O happen, by the way? March?
No, it's a little late, isn't? Well, it's before
April.
It's before WWDC.
I won't be going.
Well, I'm not sure. They don't. I mean, sometimes it changes a little bit, but it's going to be an interesting. 2014 will be an interesting year in mobile because I think now you've got one thing about this candy coating, and I'm sure this is why they did it. Is it really is a different look than Android or mobile in terms of just very bright, a lot of colors.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's interesting. I wonder if it'll be how it'll be received as the updates gets pushed out to existing users.
Well, I think I'm also curious as to, we didn't even talk about it, but Android KitKat, they're pretty tight with that right now. You can't get any information. I'm just wondering, I wonder if iOS 7's reception is going to have any influence at all on KitKat.
You think they might redo some UI stuff?
Oh, I hope they do.
It'd be interesting to see. Can we just call it 4.4? I don't really like Nestle.
No, because I like Kit Kats.
Nestle. Have you looked at what Nestle has done in the developing worlds?
Stop.
All right. We won't.
Candy.
All right, we won't end on that. So, Mr. Dominic, where should people find you throughout the
You
week?
can find me at dominicm.com.
Oh, like a website, huh? Well, very good. You can find show notes for this episode over at jupiterbroadcasting.com, as well as links to our social profiles. Email us, coderradio@jupiterbroadcasting.com, or hit that contact link at the top of our website and choose Coder Radio in the drop-down. And you can join us live on Mondays at 9 a.m., noon Eastern, over at jblive.tv. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning in this week's episode of Coder Radio. Hope you can join us live next week so you can hang out in our IRC. You even get to help name our episode, which is a lot of fun. All right, Mr. Dominic, have a great week.
You too. I'm opening my Kit Kat now.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in this week's episode of Coder Radio. See you right back here next week.